"I saw your wife yesterday," the little girl told the grieving millionaire, but moments later they discover something terrible. Leave a comment telling me what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10, and let me know what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story and get to know you better, so please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The sound of tears falling on the damp earth echoed through the Crestwood Municipal Cemetery like a silent symphony of pain. Arthur Barrington, 52, knelt before the white marble headstone that held the remains of his beloved wife, Eleanor. 6 months had passed since that terrible night, but time seemed frozen in the moment she departed forever. The businessman's calloused hands trembled as he placed a bouquet of yellow flowers on the grave. They were sunflowers, her favorite, which she used to grow in the small garden behind their house in the city's north end. The soft scent of the flowers mixed with the smell of wet earth from the morning rain, creating a melancholic atmosphere that perfectly mirrored Arthur's state of mind. He murmured, "Eleanor, my love, I don't know how to go on without you. The construction company is doing well, but none of it matters if you're not here to share it with me." Arthur closed his eyes and tried to imagine his wife's sweet smile, but the images seemed increasingly distant, as if his memory was failing him when he needed it most. Their 22-year marriage had been abruptly cut short by that terrible accident on the main avenue, and since then he had been living like a ghost of his former self. That was when he heard a small, crystalline voice behind him. "Mister, I saw your wife yesterday at the Central Market." Arthur turned slowly, still on his knees, and found himself facing a girl of about 4 years old. The child was dirty, barefoot, wearing only a faded blue dress that had seen better days. Her brown hair was tangled, and there was dirt on her small face, but her eyes shone with a strange, almost unsettling intensity. Arthur asked, confused and irritated by the interruption of his moment of grief, "What did you say?" The girl continued, pointing to the bouquet. "Your wife, she was buying yellow flowers, just like the ones you brought. She smiled at me and said she had to get home soon because her husband was waiting." Arthur's heart raced. For a moment, a wild hope filled his chest, immediately followed by the cruel reality. Eleanor had been dead for 6 months. He had been at the wake, he had carried the casket, he had seen the body being buried in the very earth where he now knelt. He tried to remain calm, telling the girl she must be confused. "My wife. She's no longer here." But the child shook her, head with determination, moving closer to him. "No, sir, I know her very well. She has a tiny little scar right here on her wrist," she said, touching her own left arm. "And she smells like jasmine. And when she's happy, she sings a song about little birds." Arthur felt the world spin around him. The scar on her left wrist, the jasmine perfume Eleanor had worn since she was a teenager, the song about little birds she would hum while cooking. How could this street child know such intimate details about his wife? His voice trembling, he asked how. She knew all of that. The girl smiled, revealing small white teeth. "She used to visit me. She told me stories and brought me books. She said one day she would take me to see her house, where there's a big bookshelf full of books and blue curtains in the living room." Arthur stood up abruptly, the blood draining from his face. The bookshelf in the living room, the blue curtains Eleanor had chosen with such care, details that only someone who had been inside his house would know. He asked what her name was, trying to process what was happening. "Lily," the girl replied, "like the flower." Eleanor said it was a pretty name for a pretty girl. "And where do you live, Lily?" The child pointed beyond the cemetery walls, toward the hills surrounding the city. "Up there, in the heights. But I always come down to look for her. Yesterday, I was sure it was her at the market." Arthur looked in the direction the girl indicated and saw the precarious houses scattered across the hillside, a reality that contrasted brutally With his comfortable life in the affluent part of Crestwood, what reason would his wife have to visit a place like that? He said impulsively. Lily, take me to your house. I want to understand this story better. The girl hesitated for a moment, biting her lower lip. You won't like it. It's very far, and the path is hard. Arthur insisted it didn't matter. I need to know more about these visits from Eleanor. He pocketed his car keys and followed the child through the winding paths leading to the heights. With every step, his confusion grew. Why had Eleanor never mentioned her visits to this place? Why did a street child know so many details about his personal life? The journey took almost an hour. Lily walked nimbly through the narrow alleys and makeshift staircases, while Arthur struggled to keep up. His business attire was completely out of place in the surroundings, and he received curious stares from the local residents. Lily stopped in front of a shack made of plywood and corrugated metal sheets, announcing, "This is it." The precarious structure had only one room, without proper doors or windows. Arthur, horrified by the conditions, asked if she lived there alone. She replied, "I do. Sometimes Mrs. Gable, who lives down there, gives me food, but I get by just fine on my own." Arthur entered the shack and was shocked by what he saw. There was no furniture, just a few pieces of cardboard on the floor that served as a bed. In a corner, there was a collection of children's books in poor condition, some with pages missing. He asked where the books came from, picking up a copy of a fairy tale book. Eleanor brought them. She said every child needs stories to dream. Arthur opened the book and found something that made him stagger. On the first page, written in his wife's unmistakable handwriting, was a dedication. "For Lily, who has the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen. With love, Eleanor." The date on the dedication was from 3 months before the accident. Arthur asked Lily if she remembered the last time she saw Eleanor. The girl thought for a moment, then pointed to a torn calendar tacked to the wall. "A long time ago. She said she would come back, but she never did. That's why I keep coming down to the city to look for her." Arthur felt his legs weaken. His wife had maintained a relationship with this child in secret, but why? And how to explain the detailed descriptions Lily gave of Eleanor and their home. Arthur asked Lily if she would like to come with him today, that they could have dinner somewhere, and she could tell him more about her conversations with Eleanor. The girl looked at him with a mixture of hope and distrust. "You promise you won't leave me somewhere bad?" He promised. "I just want to understand this story better." As they walked down the hill together, Arthur couldn't stop thinking about the books with Eleanor's dedication. His wife had created a bond with this abandoned child, a bond he knew nothing about. Now, with Eleanor dead, Lily seemed to be the only remaining link to the secrets his wife had kept. But something in the back of his mind troubled him. How could a 4-year-old girl remember so many specific details? And why did she insist on having seen Eleanor recently when that was impossible? Arthur looked at the small hand holding his as they walked, and felt that he was about to discover truths that would change everything he thought he knew about the woman he had loved for more than 2 decades. Dinner at the small restaurant on River Street passed in tense silence. Arthur watched Lily devour a plate of chicken and potatoes as if she hadn't eaten in days, while his mind buzzed with unanswered questions. The girl had washed up in the restaurant's bathroom, and even in the simple clothes he had bought at a nearby store, she radiated a strange dignity for someone so young. He said, trying to keep a casual tone, "Lily, tell me more about Eleanor's visits." The girl looked up with her large, dark eyes, chewing slowly. She went, "There every week, always on Thursday mornings. She brought food, medicine, and books for all the children." "All the children? There were other children where you lived?" Lily nodded gravely. "There was John, who's 7 and limps on his right leg. Little Light, who's only 3 and cries a lot at night. David, who knows how to count to 100. And there were about 10 more. but some of them left. Arthur felt a knot in his stomach. Eleanor visited a place with several abandoned children, and he knew nothing about it. And who took care of you? Mr. Corbin. He said we are orphans and that society has to support us. But after Eleanor stopped showing up, he got really angry and said we'd have to fend for ourselves. What is this Corbin man like? Lily grimaced. He's big, has a black mustache, and yells a lot. Whenever someone asks about the children, he gets nervous, but when Eleanor was there, he pretended to be nice. Arthur processed the information slowly. His wife had been involved with some kind of irregular orphanage run by a man named Corbin. But why did she keep it a secret? And why did she stop visiting the children before she died? He asked Lily if she remembered the last conversation she had with Eleanor. The girl grew thoughtful, playing with the grains of rice on her plate. She was different that day. She seemed worried. She said she found out bad things about Mr. Corbin and that she was going to fix everything. She promised she would come back the next week to get me. Get you? For where? To live in a real house, with books and yellow flowers in the garden. Lily smiled sadly. She said, I was going to have a family. Arthur's heart pounded. Eleanor had promised to take Lily to live in a house with books and yellow flowers. The description perfectly matched their house. Was his wife planning to adopt the girl? What happened after that conversation? She never came back. Mr. Corbin got very nervous in the following weeks. He said that important people were asking questions about the place. Then he disappeared too and left all the children alone. And the other children, where are they now? Lily shrugged. Some went to other places. Others, like me, were left to fend for themselves. I keep living in the shack because I'm waiting for Eleanor to come back. Arthur swallowed hard. The girl had been living alone for months, sustained only by the hope that Eleanor would return. This explained her visions of his wife at the Central Market. It was her childlike mind creating alternative realities to cope with abandonment. He said, choosing his words carefully, Lily, I need to tell you something very sad. Eleanor can't come back anymore. She's no longer in this world. The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head vehemently. No, sir, I saw her. Yesterday, she was fine buying flowers. He explained, my dear, you miss her so much that your mind is creating these images. Eleanor died in an accident 6 months ago. Lily jumped up from her chair abruptly, knocking over her glass of juice. You're lying. She promised she would come back. She can't have left without taking me. Everyone in the restaurant turned to look at the scene. Arthur stood up and tried to calm the girl, but she pulled away from him, running towards the door. Lily, wait! He chased her through the downtown streets, but the girl knew the alleys and shortcuts better than he did. When he finally caught up with her, she was sitting on the steps of St. Jude's Church, crying uncontrollably. She sobbed that she didn't want her to be gone, that Eleanor was the only person who truly liked her. Arthur sat down beside her, his heart breaking. She liked you very much, Lily. So much that I think she wanted to bring you to live with us. The girl lifted her tear-streaked face. Really? I think so. That's why she knew so many details about our house. She must have been planning it as a surprise. Lily leaned shyly against Arthur's arm. So you're the husband she talked about so much? I am. She said you were the kindest person in the world, that you built houses for people to live happily in. Arthur felt his own eyes well up. Even while keeping secrets, Eleanor had spoken of him with affection to this abandoned child. And she was right. I built houses, but I couldn't build a family. Why? Eleanor and I couldn't have children. It was our greatest sadness. Lily was silent for a moment. Maybe she wanted me to be your daughter. Maybe so. That night, Arthur took Lily home. The girl was fascinated to recognize every detail she had described. The bookshelf, the blue curtains, the garden of yellow flowers in the back. It was as if she already knew the place intimately. She asked if she could sleep in the room that was going to be hers, exploring the house with curiosity. Arthur took her to the guest room, which Eleanor had begun to decorate with childish motifs months before she died. There was wallpaper with colourful butterflies and a small bed that he now understood had been bought for Lily. He murmured, observing the preparations his wife had made in secret, "Eleanor really was planning to adopt you." The next morning, Arthur woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of someone humming in the kitchen. For a moment, his heart leapt, thinking Eleanor had returned. But when he came downstairs, he found Lily preparing a simple breakfast, singing the same song about little birds that his wife used to sing. She smiled and wished him a good morning, Mr. Arthur. "Eleanor taught me how to make coffee the way you like it." Arthur sat at the table, emotional. "How did she know how I like it? She said you had coffee together every morning for over 20 years, and that you like it with sugar, but just a little bit." It was exactly right. Arthur drank the coffee and tasted the familiar flavor that Eleanor had prepared daily. How had this child learned the exact recipe? He asked if Lily remembered anything else Eleanor had told her about him. The girl concentrated. She said, "You get sad sometimes because you lost your parents when you were little, and that's why you understand what it's like to be alone in the world." Arthur almost dropped his cup. Eleanor had told Lily about his difficult childhood, something he rarely shared with anyone. His wife had truly been building a deep bond with this child. Did she say anything else? That you both dreamed of having a big family with lots of children running around the house, and that maybe one day that dream would come true? Arthur felt a mixture of joy and sadness. Eleanor had found a way to make their dream come true, but fate had cruelly interrupted her plans. Now he was alone with a child who carried the memories and plans of his dead wife. Lily asked, "Mr. Arthur, can I ask something?" "Of course. Why didn't Eleanor tell you about me?" It was a simple question, but it carried the weight of all the secrets Eleanor had kept. Arthur didn't know how to answer, because he himself was still trying to understand his wife's motives. He finally said, "I think she wanted to be sure everything would work out before she told me. Eleanor was always careful with other people's feelings." Lily nodded, seemingly satisfied with the explanation, but Arthur knew there was much more to discover. Why had Eleanor gotten involved with an irregular orphanage? What did she discover about Corbin that made her so worried? And how could this child have such vivid and detailed memories of a life she had never lived? As he watched Lily play in the garden among the yellow flowers Eleanor had planted, Arthur made a decision. He would investigate everything about his wife's past and about the mysterious Corbin. He needed to understand the secrets Eleanor took to her grave and discover the truth about the child who was now his responsibility. Because, deep down, he was beginning to suspect that Lily was not just an orphan child whom Eleanor had decided to help. There was something more to this story, something his wife had discovered that had cost her her life. The second week with Lily at home brought disturbing discoveries for Arthur. The girl demonstrated knowledge impossible for her age. She knew where Eleanor kept the medicines in the bathroom cabinet, knew the combination to the safe in the office, and even remembered the secret recipe for the chocolate cake his wife made for birthdays. It was as if she had lived in that house for years, when in fact she had never been there before. On Thursday morning, Arthur asked how she knew the sugar bowl was in the top cabinet, watching her prepare the coffee with natural ease. The girl stopped stirring the sugar and looked thoughtful. I don't know. Sometimes things just pop into my head, like I already knew." It was the same answer she always gave when questioned about her strange knowledge. Arthur decided he needed professional help to understand what was happening with Lily. That same afternoon, he took her for a consultation with Dr. Celia Vance, a child neuropsychologist recommended by their pediatrician. The doctor, a middle-aged woman with gold-rimmed glasses and a kind smile, welcomed them into her office decorated with colorful drawings. The doctor asked Lily to tell her about her memories of Eleanor while the girl played with building blocks. She was very beautiful and smelled like flowers. She liked to read stories and always brought sweets. One day she told me she was going to take me to a big house with a garden. And do you remember being in that house before? Lily stopped playing and looked at Arthur. I think so. But sometimes I get confused. It's like I have two different lives in my head. Dr. Vance made notes on her clipboard. Mr. Barrington, may I speak with you in private? They stepped out into the hallway, leaving Lily entertained with the toys. The doctor closed the door before speaking. Lily shows signs of a rare phenomenon called selective amnesia, with memory incorporation. It's possible that traumatic events have caused a confusion in her temporal perception, making her mix real memories with fantasies created to cope with emotional loss. What does that mean exactly? It means she genuinely knew your wife and formed a strong emotional bond, but her mind may have filled in memory gaps with details she wished were real. It's a way for the child's psyche to process abandonment and trauma. Arthur felt a mix of relief and concern. So she's not lying? Absolutely not. To Lily, these memories are completely real. I suggest she continue with psychological support and that you investigate her past to better understand the original trauma. Back at home, Arthur decided to follow the doctor's advice. That night, after Lily fell asleep, he called Dennis Riley, a private investigator he had previously hired for matters related to his construction company. Dennis, I need you to investigate a man named Corbin who ran an irregular orphanage in the Heights, and I also want to know everything about my wife's activities in the last few months before the accident. I can start tomorrow, Arthur. But tell me, is this related to that little girl who's living with you? It has everything to do with it. I think Eleanor was involved in something I knew nothing about. The next morning, while Lily was playing in the garden, Arthur received an unexpected visit. Mrs. Peterson, the 82-year-old neighbor who had lived next door for over 15 years, showed up at the door carrying a tray of homemade cookies. Arthur, my dear boy, I brought some cookies for you, and I wanted to talk about that beautiful little girl who's with you. They sat on the porch, watching Lily run among the yellow flowers. The elderly woman's eyes were slightly teary. Mrs. Peterson, do you know Lily? Not personally, but I know who she is. Eleanor told me about her a few times. Arthur nearly dropped his coffee cup. Eleanor told you about Lily? Yes. In the last few months before the accident, your wife was very worried about a situation involving abandoned children. She discovered a place where a bad man was exploiting people's charity, keeping the children in terrible conditions. And Lily was there? Mrs. Peterson nodded gravely. Eleanor fell in love with that girl from the first visit. She said she was special, very intelligent for her age. She started bringing her gifts, books, clothes. Why did Eleanor never tell me about this? The old woman was silent for a moment, choosing her words. She was afraid of how you would react. You tried to have children for so long. Eleanor didn't want to create expectations in case the adoption didn't work out. Arthur's heart raced. So she really was planning to adopt Lily. Not just planning. She was in the middle of the process. She had documents, medical reports, everything. Eleanor spent months investigating the legal status of those children. And this Corbin guy. Mrs. Peterson's face hardened. Corbin. A terrible man who took advantage of the children's vulnerability. Eleanor discovered that he was forging documents, collecting money from families interested in adoption, and mistreating the children when no one was looking. Arthur shot up from his chair, agitated. Why didn't she get help? Why didn't she report him? She was going to. The week before the accident, Eleanor came to my house very nervous. She said she had gathered evidence against Corbin and was going to the district attorney's office the following Monday, but she died on Friday. Exactly. The accident happened when she was coming back from a final visit to the children in the Heights. She wanted to say goodbye and promise them they would soon be in safe places. Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. Mrs. Peterson, do you think the accident— I don't know, my boy, but I know Eleanor was very scared in her last days. She said Corbin had found out about her investigation and was making threats. Just then, Lily came running onto the porch, holding a bouquet of yellow flowers she had picked from the garden. "Mr. Arthur, can I take these flowers to Eleanor?" "Take them where, my dear?" he asked, confused. "To the place where she is now. You said she couldn't come back, but you didn't say I couldn't visit her." Mrs. Peterson and Arthur exchanged emotional glances. The girl wanted to visit Eleanor's grave. "Of course you can, Lily. Let's go now." At the cemetery, Lily behaved in a surprising way. She knelt beside the headstone and began talking to Eleanor as if she could hear her. "Eleanor, I found your husband. He's very handsome and kind, just like you said. And the house is beautiful, with lots of books and yellow flowers. But I miss you every day." Arthur knelt beside her, moved. "She misses you too, Lily?" Lily asked. "Mr. Arthur, can Eleanor hear me?" "I'm sure she can." Lily smiled and placed the flowers on the headstone. "Then she knows I'm going to take care of you now, just like she always asked." Arthur frowned. "What do you mean she always asked?" "During her visits, Eleanor always said that if anything happened to her, I had to take care of you, that you would be very sad all alone." Another impossible memory. How could Eleanor have made such a request if she never expected to die so soon? On the way home, Arthur received a call from Dennis. "Arthur, I found important information about Corbin. He disappeared from the city the same week as Eleanor's accident, and there's something else disturbing." "What?" "I managed to talk to some people who knew the orphanage. Corbin wasn't just negligent with the children. He was selling fake birth certificates and facilitating illegal adoptions for foreign families." Arthur stopped the car abruptly. "Are you saying he was selling the children?" "It's possible. And there are indications that Eleanor discovered this scheme. I found a former city employee who remembers her asking a lot of questions about birth records and orphan documentation. What about Lily? Was she involved in this?" "That's the strangest part, Arthur. I couldn't find any official record of Lily's existence. No birth certificate, no medical records, nothing. It's as if she doesn't exist to the state." Arthur looked at Lily in the rearview mirror. The girl was sleeping peacefully in the back seat, hugging the fairy tale book Eleanor had given her. "Dennis, keep investigating. I need to understand who Lily really is." "There's a possibility you need to consider, Arthur." "What is it?" "Maybe Lily isn't an orphan. Maybe she was kidnapped as a baby and raised in Corbin's orphanage. That would explain the lack of documents and the confused memories she has." Arthur felt the world spin. If Lily had been kidnapped, then somewhere there was a desperate family searching for her for 4 years. And Eleanor, without knowing, had fallen in love with a child who needed to be returned to her real parents. But then why was Lily so sure she belonged in his and Eleanor's house? Why were her memories so specific and convincing? As he drove through the quiet streets of Crestwood, Arthur wondered if he was willing to uncover the truth, even if it meant losing the only connection he had left with his deceased wife. 3 weeks after the discovery about Lily's lack of documents, Arthur received the call that would change everything. Dennis had found something extraordinary in his old police files. "Arthur, you need to come to my office right now. I found something about Lily that will shock you." Arthur left the girl with Mrs. Peterson and drove quickly to the city centre. In Dennis's modest office, a table was covered with documents, photographs, and newspaper clippings. Sit down, the investigator said with a grave expression. In 2019, a family in Denver reported the disappearance of their 6-month-old daughter. The parents were Charles and Regina Stevens. Arthur picked up a photograph showing a young couple holding a baby with brown hair and dark eyes. His heart pounded. Lily? Possibly. The child's name was Isabella Stevens, and she disappeared from the hospital where she was being treated for pneumonia. She was never found. That means that Lily could be Isabella, kidnapped as a baby and raised in Corbin's clandestine orphanage. Arthur studied the documents with trembling hands. But how do you explain her memories of Eleanor, the visits, the details about our house? Dennis pointed to another set of papers. I found something even more disturbing. Eleanor wasn't just investigating the orphanage. She had hired a private lab to do a DNA test on Lily. DNA? For what? I believe she suspected the girl's true identity and wanted to be sure before going to the authorities. Arthur felt his legs go weak. The test results? Do you have them? I do. Eleanor picked them up from the lab 2 days before the accident. Dennis handed him a sealed envelope with Eleanor's name handwritten on it. It's never been opened. With trembling hands, Arthur tore open the envelope and read the result. For a moment, the world stood still. The letters danced before his eyes, but the conclusion was unequivocal. It's not possible, he murmured. The test showed that Lily was not Isabella Stevens. In fact, it showed something completely different. Lily was biologically the daughter of Eleanor Barrington. How is this possible? Arthur asked, rereading the results several times. Eleanor couldn't have children. The doctors confirmed it. Dennis leaned forward. Arthur, there's a possibility you need to consider. What if Eleanor had a child and for some reason had to give her up? What if she was trying to get her own daughter back? Arthur's mind began to process a devastating reality. But she never told me. How would she hide a pregnancy? I don't know. But it would explain why Lily has such specific memories about you two. If she's Eleanor's daughter, maybe she has a genetic connection that allows for memories of experiences her mother lived. Arthur stood up and began pacing. This is impossible, Dennis. Eleanor and I lived together. How could she have a daughter without me knowing? Unless, Dennis said slowly, the child was born before you were married or during a time when you were separated. Suddenly, an old memory hit Arthur like a bolt of lightning. 25 years ago, he and Eleanor had a serious fight and were separated for almost a year. He had traveled to Chicago for work, and she had temporarily moved to her parents' house in the countryside. When they reunited, they decided to get married immediately, but never spoke in detail about that period of separation. Dennis, I need to go home now. Arthur, what are you going to do? Look for answers in Eleanor's belongings. If she had a daughter, there must be evidence. Back at home, Arthur found Lily playing in the garden with Mrs. Peterson. The girl ran to hug him, and for the first time, he looked at her with different eyes. The delicate features, the shape of her eyes, the serene expression, it all reminded him of a young Eleanor. Mr. Arthur, why are you sad? Lily asked, touching his face. I'm not sad, my dear, I'm just thinking. After Mrs. Peterson left, Arthur went up to Eleanor's room and began searching through her personal belongings. In the back of the closet, he found a box he had never opened. Inside were old photographs, letters, and a diary with a lock. He carefully opened the diary and began to read the entries from the early years of their relationship. At first, they were normal accounts of their courtship, wedding plans, the temporary separation. But then he found an entry that made his heart stop. March 15th, 1999. Today I found out I'm pregnant. Arthur is in Chicago, and we don't even know if we'll get back together. I can't tell him like this, over the phone. I need to decide what to do on my own." Arthur continued reading with trembling hands. August 22nd, 1999. Lily was born today. She's the most beautiful child in the world, but I know I can't raise her alone. Mom and Dad helped me find a good family to adopt her. The couple promised she would have a better life than I could give her right now. August 30th, 1999. I gave Lily up today. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I promised myself that one day when my life was stable, I would find her and explain everything. The following pages were stained with old tears. Arthur realized that Eleanor had given her daughter up for adoption and had spent 20 years searching for her. When she finally found her in Corbin's clandestine orphanage, she decided to bring her back. The last relevant entry was dated 2 weeks before the accident. "Lily doesn't recognize me as her mother, but I feel our connection. She calls me Mrs. Eleanor and accepts my affection as if she's always known me. Arthur will understand when I explain everything. I just need to resolve the situation with Corbin first and make sure she's safe." Arthur closed the diary and walked slowly downstairs. Lily was in the living room, flipping through an old photo album. He asked Lily, "Do you remember living in other places before the Heights?" The girl became thoughtful. "Sometimes I dream of a big house that smells like flowers, and a woman who used to rock me while singing. But I don't know if it's real or just a dream. And what if I told you that Eleanor was your real mother?" Lily looked up, her large eyes shining with emotion. "Really?" Arthur knelt in front of her. "Really? She gave you up for adoption when you were a baby because she wanted you to have a better life, but she never stopped looking for you. And you? Are you my father?" Arthur's heart broke, not biologically, but if you want me to, I would very much like to be your father in my heart. Lily threw herself into his arms, crying with joy. "I do! Eleanor said you were the kindest man in the world. And why do you remember so many things about our life here?" Lily shrugged with the typical simplicity of a child. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I've been here before, like it's my place." That night, Arthur called Dr. Vance to tell her about his discoveries. The doctor was fascinated by the case. It's possible that Lily has genetic memories or such a strong emotional connection to Eleanor that she developed memories of experiences her biological mother lived. Science doesn't yet fully explain these phenomena, but they exist. In the following months, Arthur arranged all the necessary paperwork to formalize Lily's custody. The process was made easier by the fact that Eleanor had left everything organized before she died, including a letter addressed to him explaining the whole situation. A year after their first meeting at the cemetery, the adoptive father and daughter planted a memorial garden for Eleanor. Lily, now 5 and attending a private school, had developed into a happy and secure child. One morning she said, "Dad," using the word Arthur had longed to hear for the first time, "is Mommy Eleanor happy now?" "I'm sure she is, my daughter. She got what she wanted most, to bring us together as a family." Lily smiled and went back to playing among the yellow flowers, humming the song her biological mother had taught her through a connection that transcended human understanding. Arthur watched, grateful to have found love. Again, in the form of a little girl who brought back the light he thought he had lost forever. And although Eleanor was no longer physically present, her presence was felt in every laugh from Lily, every story told before bed, every moment of love that filled the house that had finally become a true home. Eleanor's promise had been fulfilled. They were a family, united by a love that not even death could separate. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.